JP is on form this morning. Who knew that JP had a thing for post women? And uniforms, didn't know that. So, single guy, I'll try and hook, well, I would try and hook you up with my postal worker, but I don't think you'd like his beard. So, oh dear. So, I'm going to do one message, or one-off message today, like JP said, saying, quit giving up. And so I'm going to jump straight in. I'm Phil. If you don't know who I am, I'm Phil. I run this place. And my family, I've got 4 kids, me and the wife, 4 kids, and 2 of them and me, so that's half of the family, 3 out of 6, good at maths. We are jiu-jitsu people. So we go and do jiu-jitsu a couple of times a week. Started at MMA sort of stuff, punching each other, and all that, and we thought that was a bad idea because Joel started to beat me up. So we changed, morphed into just the jiu-jitsu side of things. And so we go and do that a few times a week. It's great fun. The kids train like at 5 p.m. for an hour, and then they stick around and play while I train 6 onwards, Tuesdays and Thursdays, some Saturdays. But the whole point of jiu-jitsu, if you don't know, it's like the judo karate-looking dudes in a gi. They have or a kimono, like unrippable pajamas. That's what they are, really. That's what they are. But they're really thick. I hate wearing them. I get so hot in them. It's horrible. But they started doing this a few years ago, and the idea at their level is to win on points. You can win on points. Certain positions of dominance, if you can dominate the other person. If you get them in side control, if you sit on them like a horse, if you hold them from the back, you get different points for different things. You get points for taking them down, all these things, and they add up over the time. And at the end, somebody's got the most points, they win. And so that is sort of the goal, but it's not really the goal. That's like just warm-up jiu-jitsu. That's like getting to real adult jiu-jitsu, which is actually to make the other person quit. That's the idea. The points are just to try and reflect getting to that point for kids and people who are learning and white belts like me. That's all it is. What you're trying to do is get the other person to quit, to tap out. You're getting them to tap out, to say, you win, I don't want to play with you anymore. That's the idea of the game, so you can feel big and strong and clever. And so that is the whole notion of jiu-jitsu. And so you can get tapped out by lots of different manners. You can be choked from behind, a rear naked choke to the point you can't breathe. And it's not, some of you think a choke and it's like pushing on your windpipe. It's not. It's pushing on the carotid artery so you suddenly get tired and fall asleep. That's what you're actually doing. Or you can have an arm bar where someone's trying to snap your arm in half, or a leg lock, or a number of different things. A triangle where you choke someone unconscious as well. But any of you guys who have met my son, he's like a Milky Bar kid. That's it. No, he's not like the Milky Bar kid. He looks like the Milky Bar kid, but he's been sort of fused with the Tasmanian devil. It's that sort of combination. He looks cheeky and nice, but he's vicious. He'll rip your arm off. And ever since he started, he went into the mentality of this. Even when he knew nothing, he didn't know anything about anything jiu-jitsu. He'd see someone who's really good, and his mentality is, I'm gonna win. And he goes into the fights all the time, even in training. And in his head, and I don't know this is in here, but I can tell, he's going, I ain't tapping out. I ain't tapping out. There's no way I'm tapping out. And he refuses to tap out, and it's horrible as a parent on the sideline. His arms being bent, and he's looking at it going, don't even know it, don't even know it. But he's refusing to tap out, and he's getting choked, and he's refusing to tap out because he has this mentality of, I am not going to quit. I'm not going to quit. And I quite like that. I sort of think that's a bit of me and him as well, but it can get us in trouble. We'll get into that in a minute. But Ava, my second child, my daughter, she's 7 years old, Friday, just turned 7 years old. She started about a year ago, and she's a dream. She's so easy. She's just, you say to her, sit there and don't move. She'll go, okay. And so when she goes to jiu-jitsu, she actually listens. It's really cool. She sits there and listens and learns, and she does what her instructor says. And her instructor has told her, anytime you're uncomfortable, someone's got you around the neck, someone's got your arm, even if you don't feel comfortable at all, you can tap out, Ava. You're just saying, stop, I want to stop. And so Ava's gone, okay. So that was her mentality going into jiu-jitsu. It's like, anytime I feel uncomfortable, I tap out. And so this happened for 6 months or so. She's learning, she's doing really well. I love going, I love watching. And she keeps tapping out. This is sort of 6 months ago. Keeps tapping out all the time. And I'm like, what are you tapping out for? Like, that wasn't even on. That choke wasn't even on. You weren't even unconscious yet. No, it wasn't. I just said to her after on the car on the way home, like, just in conversation over a number of weeks, like, you know you don't have to tap out, right? And she's like, yeah, but Lee says, that's their instructor, if you're uncomfortable, you know, you don't want it, just tap out and we'll stop and they just start again. No one dies, so it's cool. And I was like, but do you understand that you don't have to tap out? That you can put up with being uncomfortable if you want to. You haven't got to. You do what you want. You tap out. You do what you want. But you can actually fight the person off. You can put in we call them the telephones, to stop them choking. You can pull their arms. You can roll. You can do lots of things to make yourself less and less uncomfortable and not give up, not quit, not tap out. And she was like, oh. And then her eyes changed. It's like, oh, I see now. So now she sort of understands the principle of, you're trying to make me tap out, but I don't really want to tap out, and I'm going to try and make you tap out. And so for a number of months, she's been defending all these chokes, pulling them off, and I'm on the sideline going, yeah, well done, good, a different mentality. Until just this week on Thursday, she was working with a lovely little girl who sort of jumped over gently. They were practicing something and kneed Ava straight in the face, bless her. And her lip burst, bleeding, and she just stood up, walked to Daddy, and put her arms around me and cried. And so the little girl, are you right, Ava? Sorry. And I was like, are you okay? And it's just, because I overheat at jiu-jitsu, all the guys think I'm weird. I take with me freezer blocks that you put in. And so I have cold things with me all the time to cool me down. And so I was like, I've got freezer blocks. It looks like I'm a good dad. Come prepared, it's nothing, it's all selfishness. And so I put it on her lips, she was fine, end of class, and I didn't mention it. And I went into my class, and it was funny, within 10 minutes, exactly the same thing happened. This guy kneed me in the face accidentally while trying to do something, just to try and learn something, split my lip, and I was bleeding everywhere. And carried on, done the class, on the way home. And I said to Ava, you got whacked in the face tonight? She's like, yeah. I was like, did it hurt? She's like, yeah, it hurt. I wanted to stop it hurt, and it scared me a bit. And I said to her, and some of you will think I'm a really bad dad for this, but I said to her, did you see what Daddy did when I got kneed in the face? And she was like, you cried like a girl, Dad. No, she said, well, you just carried on. And I said, yeah. And I was like, and again, I wasn't pressuring her. I'm not trying to make it, I'm not trying to live vicariously through her action. I don't care. You tap out, you do what you want, babe. As long as you're enjoying it and you're learning, that's all I care about. But do you understand, even if you get hit in the face and you're bleeding, and it hurts and you're frightened and it scares you, that if you want to, you can carry on. That you don't have to stop. You don't have to come and have a cuddle from me. I'm like, it's cool if you do. I'm here. I like cuddles. They're my favorite thing. But you can choose, if you want to not quit, to not tap out. You can choose to do that even when you get a whack in the face. And it's natural for you to do, most people would. But you've got the choice, if you want to carry on, if you wanted to carry on and not give up. And I just saw her eyes again. It's like levels to this of uncomfortableness that she can endure in this sport, in this competition. And guys who get to the very high levels of it have to go through these stages of understanding. Even when it hurts, even when it feels like my arm's going to snap and it's not, I can still not tap out. I was using this opportunity to teach her something more than about jiu-jitsu. More of a life lesson is, even when you feel like giving up, that you can choose, that she could choose to not tap out. She could choose to not tap out, to give up, to shut down, to let go, to check out, whatever terminology you would use. And I want a really important note here. Quitting sometimes is the right thing to do, all right? I'm not talking about these. I want to separate this today. Quitting is sometimes the right thing to do, the appropriate thing to do, the correct thing to do, the thing that's God-directed. It's like God's like, you need to quit that. You need to stop that. You need to shut that down. You need to let that go. Sometimes it's required, and sometimes we take too long to quit some things that we should have quit a long time ago. But I'm not talking about that stuff today. I don't want to talk about any of that stuff today. I want to talk about the stuff we know we should not quit. The stuff we know we should not quit. Not jiu-jitsu where you can choose to or not, and it's just fun and you might be progressing and getting better at it. But the stuff in our life that we know we shouldn't quit. Because it's either right or because it's wise or it's God's best or it's God's plan, whatever. The things you know you shouldn't quit. Whether that's with regard to your job and your work life or church life or serving or friendship or relationship or marriage or even in your kids or even in faith in general. And like Ava, that sometimes we have to learn to bear the pain, take discomfort when the jiu-jitsu picture, even when the enemy's pressuring you, because that's what happens in jiu-jitsu so often. You just get pressure, even on your face, on the floor, on your chest, and it hurts, it's uncomfortable. It's like, this is not nice. But learning to bear that pain, take that discomfort, bite down, double down, weather the storm, and in the long run, you receive a reward. And in jiu-jitsu, the long run of receiving that reward will be better. She's getting better and better, go to competitions, would win medals, could go on and do, great things in the world of jiu-jitsu if she wanted to. And so bearing that pain and choosing not to tap out, choosing not to quit, could bring with it reward. And James put it like this with regard to some of the areas of our life. James 1:12 says this, blessed is the one, check it, who perseveres under trial. Not perseveres when it's easy, not just carries on day to day, but under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. You read in Hebrews 10:36, it says this, you need to persevere, so that when you've done the will of God, check that, persevering within the will of God, you will receive what he has promised. Paul wrote to the Galatians in Galatians 6:9, so let's not get tired. Oh, that's probably 50% of the giving up and quitting, especially in sports, especially in combat sports. It's not that you're bigger and tougher. The other person's fitter and you get tired and you give up because it's hard. And Paul says, so let's not get tired of doing what is good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. If we don't give up. So which of us in the room need to quit giving up? Because there can be, I started writing some out, but I won't share them. But there's so many reasons to quit. There's so many reasons to quit any aspect of our life. There's loads, from being tired, like we said, to even being bored with something, overwhelmed with difficulty or pain or hurt. Even shame can stop you and make you quit. Or fear or worry. It's just endless. And so I want to be really real and authentic with you, because I think it's good to do that in church, is to understand that we all feel like quitting sometimes. We all feel like quitting sometimes. And I've been there multiple times in multiple areas of my life. Sometimes at the same time. Multiple areas of my life, but multiple times where I feel like quitting. And we all feel like quitting sometimes. And I'm talking about the things that you know you shouldn't quit. The things you know you shouldn't quit, that you know God's leading you in, whatever that is for your personal life. And I bet, we got the Queen's funeral tomorrow, and King Charles just started his reign, but I bet even kings feel it. I bet even kings feel that, of like, I want to give up. And some of you might look at their lifestyle and say, why have I got it all? I look at this and think, I would want to do that job. I bet even kings feel it. I bet he's felt it recently and just think, shall I just tap out? There's so much pressure in the media. And so from kings all the way down to beggars and thieves, everyone, we've all had that feeling. You know what I mean, that feeling, that down on your knees feeling of I want to give up. That down on your knees feeling of like, I've got nothing left. I want to give up. I know I'm supposed to. I know I shouldn't, but I want to give up, that down of my knees feeling. And I reminisced, and it was funny actually, because we had a bit of a difficult morning here setting up technically, and our band leader was pulling his hair out because it was a quite tricky one. But it reminded me of 20 years ago when I used to run the band in church. And I remember vividly driving home in my Fiat Panda, the old Fiat Panda, rag roof. So it's like a sunroof, but it wasn't. It was cheaper than the metal, I think. You used to go over 60 miles an hour. This thing used to fly off. And so I remember driving home after a particularly difficult band practice for church. We'd only really just started, it's like 20 years ago, and really only just started getting a band together. I was leading that group of people who, I'm just going to be blatantly honest with you, who are a group of very difficult people who just had, musicians are like that. Creatives are like that. They're just, they're just difficult. It was the difficult part of doing it, not the technical side, but it was difficult. And I just remember getting in the car on the way home, and I was just like, ugh. The band are being a pain in the amp. And I was thinking, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. It's just too hard. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. And this gentle voice inside me was just like, okay, all right, that's how you feel. You feel like that. It's all valid feelings. But don't you quit. It's like, all of them things are valid. The way you feel about it is that anyone would feel like that in that situation. But don't you quit. And obviously I didn't. And so I want to say, with the God stuff in your life, the things that God's leading you to inside and outside of church, I'm not talking about church ministry. I'm talking about every element of your life that God's called you to. I want to say this because I think it's important to understand that maybe it's okay to want to quit, but don't you quit. That maybe it's okay that you want to when things are hard, no matter what area, church, job, marriage, kids, relationships, friendships, any area of life. Maybe it's okay that you want to quit, but don't you quit. And I was thinking about this when I was preparing this. Who's this message for? And I was like, I don't know. I haven't got a clue. Maybe there's one person in the room who's on the edge of quitting, and I'm like, none to do with me. That's up to you. And maybe you're sat in here and there's things, this is resonating with you, and you want to give up. Maybe you want to shut down or let go of something or check out completely. And I'm saying today in that gentle voice that I heard is, but don't you quit. I think of all the stories in Scripture. I went through so many in the Old Testament and New, but I remember the story of Elijah, this great prophet of God, and God was using him to do great work, the works of God, and suddenly people in charge said, we're going to kill him. And this guy, this amazing dude, powerful guy, got terrified and ran away. He ran away and hid. This prophet ran away and hid. And basically, from his actions, you could tell he's like, I'm done. I'm checking out. I'm quitting. I can't do this. I'm terrified. And his motive was fear. And I can understand someone wanting to kill me. I think I'd probably feel the same. But he hid. And it says in Scripture that God came to him and basically said in this voice, why are you here? I've purposed you over here. And you're running away. You're quitting. You're tapping out. You haven't done that yet. God knew in his heart, he's not there yet, but physically he felt it and stuff. Physically he was moving away and hiding. And God said, why are you here? And Elijah explained to God, this and that and everything, and poured out all of his feelings. And God was like, okay, that's cool, but don't you quit. That's all right, you feel like, but don't you quit. And he moved him on straight away. He ended up finding Elisha, and the story goes on. But the Bible is full of people who probably felt like giving up, but chose to quit giving up. They chose to quit giving up. You think of Job in the book of James, it says the words this, it says about, you've heard of Job's perseverance. I like the assumption of James there. You've heard of Job's perseverance, and he is talking to a group of people who would have heard of Job's perseverance. And if you haven't, read the book of Job, spelt Job, Job. If you haven't got one, get one. And so, Just joking. But in the book of James, he says, you've heard of Job's perseverance. He was saying it's so famous, this story of Job's perseverance and the outcome that the Lord made, the outcome from the Lord at the end of it. And he's saying he did not quit, even though he had every reason. And I want to say, if you feel like quitting something that's godly in your life, God wouldn't want you to quit, just go and read the book of Job. Go and read the book of Job and you'll be like, I got it easy. And so he must have wanted to quit. He must have wanted to do these things, but he chose not to quit. He quit giving up. You think of Joshua and Caleb, the two of the younger guys who Moses sent out to spy out the land, and they went with another 10 guys, and 10 come back and said, no, too big, can't do it, give up, tap out, I check out, I'm giving up. And Caleb and Joshua were like, it's fine, we can do this. It's fine, we'll beat them up. They're like Joel, I ain't tapping out, I can beat anyone up. And that's what the spirit they had, and yet they had to live and wait patiently for 40 years until all them other guys died out before God brought them to the promised land. I can imagine waiting 40 years. We struggle to wait 25 seconds for something to load on our phone or something. But 40 years to walk out God's promises in your world, especially when you've had a glimpse of it. Imagine that. They must have wanted to check out, to tap out. But they didn't. They chose, we're not going to. And it's easy to feel it. I think it's so easy to feel like quitting when others around you are quitting or others around you have quit. It must be easy, but Joshua and Caleb had that spirit of I'm not quitting. Jesus wrote in Luke 11 about with our mentality even towards prayer. And he used this story of saying, imagine a friend comes in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m, banging on the door saying, give us some bread, I've got some guests and we ain't got anything in. I know if Matt come and banged on my door, I'd be like, shove it, I'd lean out the door, shove off, go away. And if he did, great, I'd go back to bed. But Jesus was saying, but if he keeps banging on the door all night, you'll get up. You'll go to the freezer, you'll get it over, you'll throw it in his face, and then you'll go back to bed. And Jesus used this funny picture to describe how we should not quit in our prayer life, in asking God for the things that we need. He said, don't quit, just keep asking, and God will do it in his timing, when he's ready, within his will. He used a similar story about a persistent widow who kept going to a judge, moaning about a particular problem. This judge didn't care. It was like, go away, no. And it said, Jesus says in this story that the judge in the end, even though he wasn't a godly man, even though he wasn't a just judge, in the end just went, have what you want, it's yours, because you're just doing my head in. And Jesus is like, I want that mentality with your prayer life, of don't quit, lean in, constantly seeking God. We think about in Matthew 9 with the woman with the issue of blood, been bleeding for 12 years, I think it was, and then trying to get to Jesus. Imagine putting up with all that time, and then she's pressing into the crowd, trying to get a touch of Jesus to get healed, and being rejected and pushed back. You know what an English person would have done in that state? Sorry, excuse me, sorry, no. But she was like, nah, I'm not having it. She's like, I refuse to quit. I've quit giving up years ago. I'm getting what I need. And I love this mentality that this story brings of just refusing to give up. I'm refusing to give up. Almost angry about it. In Matthew 15, there was a Canaanite woman who come and asked Jesus to heal her daughter. And Jesus was like, nope. And we don't know all the reasons for that. I think he was drawing faith out. I think he was using an example for other people to demonstrate her faith. And in the end, the woman just wouldn't stop, and kept saying things until Jesus went, okay. And I think it was that demonstration of perseverance, of saying, I believe you got the power and I'm willing to do everything it takes. And Jesus, in the end, healed her daughter. You think about Mark 10 and the story of the blind beggar who was shouting out for Jesus. He couldn't see him, but he knew he was coming. He could hear the crowds, and the crowds were shushing him. Shh, shh. It's like, important man, you shush. You shush, you're blind and you're a beggar. Shut up, you're not important. And I can imagine many people just shrinking back into themselves then. But this beggar was like, nah, I'm having it. And not only am I not going to shush, I'm going to be louder. And he was like, I ain't giving up. I refuse to give up. And it can be for the other people in your world as well. You think about the story in Mark 2 of the crippled guy, and his mates brought him on a bed to come and see Jesus. And Jesus was in the house, and there were so many people you couldn't even get in the door. It reminds me of like my student days at the bar, 7 deep. You just couldn't get in. It was pointless. You might as well have gone home. And so, but these guys were like, nah, we're not giving up. We're not giving up. I refuse to quit. And they carried him up on a bed, up on the ceiling, dug a hole through the ceiling, and then lowered him down. Talk about a good mate. We were talking about how important it is to have bloke mates. Have you got 4 bloke mates who even lift you onto a roof? I don't think I've got 4 who could. Maybe a winch system or something. Yeah, Felix would just throw me up, wouldn't he? But they refused to quit on behalf of their friend as well. Just they weren't quitting. They quit giving up a long time ago in their mentality. They refused to quit in this seeking Jesus thing. And I think the Apostle Paul would say regarding this sort of stuff is to quit giving up. In 1 Corinthians, he wrote, in 1 Corinthians 15, it says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord. And that's what he was talking about really is God's work in your life and through your life. Because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. And later in the same letter, 1 Corinthians 16, jump down, it says, and finishes off and says, be on guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous. And he's like, be strong. And that's like my advice to Ava when she's wrestling and fighting in jiu-jitsu. It's like, be strong. Not just body-wise, because she is a little machine, but like with your mind, be strong. Don't let uncomfortableness and pain make you tap out when you don't need to. And there are times we should. But when you know you're not supposed to, be strong. In Ephesians, he wrote this letter, Paul, Ephesians 6:13 says this, therefore put on every piece of God's armor. We know if you're in church any length of time, you know about the armor of God. It says this though, so you'll be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. It says this, then after the battle, you will still be standing firm. We are to resist. We're to keep going, never giving up. So at the end, we'll be standing firm. And this is coming from this dude, Paul, who went through more than probably all of the disciples put together. All of the rest of the apostles. His list, his resume of difficulty is like, it's ridiculous. He even recorded it in 2 Corinthians. And I'm not reading all of this, but it's in prison. It's not going to go on the screen, but he said he was in prison more often than he could account, really. But 5 different times he had 39 lashes. Or in some translations, it said he has 40 minus 1, because in some languages, that's how you count. 40 minus 1, 39 lashes. 5 times he got whoosh, 39 times for this work of Jesus. 3 times beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. And he doesn't mean stoned. He means stones thrown at him to the point of death. And they probably thought that he was dead when they walked away. 3 times shipwrecked. Spent a whole night, a day adrift at sea. That alone is a story. Been hungry and thirsty. And have gone without food, shivered in the cold with no clothing to keep warm. And then he even adds on the end, and I've got the daily burden of my concern for all the churches. And knowing what I know about leading church stuff, I'm like, that's heavier than all the other stuff put together. He had such a burden, such a difficult time. And he says, you need to be standing firm, not resisting all the time, never giving up. Quit giving up. And in Hebrews, we won't put it on the screen for time's sake as well, it says the words, run with perseverance. Run the race marked out for you from your Father in heaven, or for us, for God, fixing our eyes on Jesus. And it says this, consider him. And it was talking about Jesus. It says in Hebrews, consider him who endured such opposition. Consider Jesus who endured such opposition you can't even imagine, so that you will not grow weary. And so Paul was saying, I want you to imagine Jesus. I want you to think about Jesus. Consider him. When you're feeling like you're going to get weary, consider the level of opposition that he endured. When you're feeling like giving up, consider what Jesus had to push back against, and choose not to tap out when you're feeling weary, so you will not grow weary. And it says in Hebrews, but for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. That's in Hebrews 12. For the joy, I love that, the joy set before him, he endured the cross. So even Jesus had that down on my knees feeling. Even he had that, I want to quit, I'm done. This is hard, I want to quit. He had that down on that knees feeling. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, just before he was taken away, and he's asked his disciples to watch out and pray and give me some time. I want to go to the Father in heaven. I've got all this feeling going on. And it says that he fell on his knees. He laid down his face to the ground and he prayed to the Father. And he basically was saying, I want to give up. I'm done. I feel like quitting. In Matthew 26:38, it puts it like this. 38 and 39, he said he told them, my soul is crushed. And I'm sure you've been there at some element in your life, maybe just one area, but maybe entirely in your world sometimes. He told them, my soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. He's so underburdened, so wanting to tap out. It feels like he's going to die. When you're in a jiu-jitsu match and someone's around your neck and you're about to pass out, honestly, it feels like you're going to die. If you're terrified, it's like, and that's why we've got the little button to tap out. But Jesus was saying, I'm at that point, my soul is crushed. There's no tapping out button in terms of the soldiers, but he's going to his Father and says, my soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. He was telling his disciples, and he said, stay here and keep watch with me. He went on a little farther and bowed with his face to the ground, praying, my Father, check these words out from the Savior. If it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. He's saying, I don't want to do it. If there's any other way, then I don't want to do it. I want to give up that little bit of what I have to do. If there's another, can we circumvent this? Can I tap out? And then I can go another round with somebody else. Can I come back and have another competition, do it a different way? I want to tap out. I feel like giving up. And I love the words that he then carries on, because he doesn't finish it there and wait for the Father's response from heaven, but he says, yet I want your will to be done, not mine. And what, for me, Jesus saying, I don't want to do this, I want to quit, I want to tap out, but your will be done. I'm going to do it because it's in your will. Everything within me screaming, I don't want to do this. I'm crushed to the point of death, of grief of death, and even sweat and blood in some scriptures it says. And so even the King of Kings fell to his knees and cried, take this cup from me. If it can be done, please, let it be done a different way. And so Jesus has felt like you. He's felt like me. Even the King of Kings has felt just like me at them times, that down on my knees feeling. And yet he chose to not tap out. And I love the fact that Joel will not tap out. He'll choose to persevere even if it kills him. And Jesus persevered even though it did kill him. And maybe you feel like tapping out. Maybe you're in here and at some area of your life you feel like tapping out. You feel like tapping out on God. You feel like tapping out on marriage or tapping out on life in general. And I want to say that your Father knows that sometimes that you want to give up, that sometimes you want to just shut down, that sometimes you just want to let go of everything and check out. But he's here through his Spirit, I think, saying to us today, but don't you quit. That you might want to check out, you might want to tap out, you might want to give up, but don't you quit. Amen. I just want us to do something a little different, and I'm going to